Hey you! Get out of here! My sister, Jane, burst into my room and said that out of the blue.
What's this all of a sudden? I don't understand what you mean.
You really are dumb. You're in the way, that's what. So get out of this house and live somewhere else. That's right, people who aren't family should leave. Jane and her daughter, Lily, both said this, smirking and laughing together.
This is my house, so I'm not leaving. You should leave, sis.
I retorted, angered, but they were not listening. I'm going to use your room. Get out. Old lady, go live in the yard.
Get out!
I pushed the two of them out of my room and locked the door. It's pointless to do that, you know. That's right. We'll come every day until you leave. True to their words, from that day on, Jane and Lily came to my living area several times a day, repeatedly telling me to leave. The result of my frustration selling the house. My name is Erin Smith, I'm 25 years old. I work as a programmer, mostly from home. Though sometimes I have to go out for work. There are some projects that just can't be handled remotely. But mostly, my home is my workplace. I currently live with my parents, but I have an older sister, 3 years my senior. Since childhood, Jane has been adorable, the kind of person you can't help but love at first sight. But perhaps because of that, she developed a liking for men and became a troublesome person. She hardly went to school after middle school and moved in with a boyfriend as soon as she graduated. She had a daughter, Lily, at 16, unmarried at the time. Eventually, they married, but divorced 5 years later. Jane came back home with Lily. The divorce was caused by Jane's infidelity. She couldn't stay with just one man and had affairs with several others behind her husband's back. I was in middle school to high school at the time and grew to detest my sister. That's understandable. I've been watching her irresponsible way of living since I was in my sensitive years, late in elementary school. I found the idea of romance repulsive and vowed never to become like my sister. Since then, Jane has been in and out of our parents' house, changing partners frequently, and now she's pregnant with her 5th child, with her current partner. They are married, at least, so the child's father is confirmed, at least on the birth certificate. The reality, though, is unclear. Our parents are at their wits' end with Jane but seem unable to do anything. Every time Jane causes trouble, they just fret. I was frustrated with my parents, but they are still my parents. I can't abandon them. So I still live with them. My father is already retired, and my mother was a homemaker. I'm supporting the family financially. Fortunately, the skills I developed since my student days allow me to earn a decent income. I give my parents some allowance, but it seems they secretly give it to Jane. After all, it's money I gave, so how my parents use it is up to them. Even though I think this way, I know Jane doesn't use the money wisely. Thinking she might as well throw it on the street sometimes just gets to me. Ever since I can remember, Jane has always been the queen bee. My parents let her have her way and were strict with me. I heard that right after I was born, my paternal grandmother passed away. She had doted on Jane, her first grandchild, who was adorable in appearance. That's why Jane became uncontrollably spoiled and difficult, so they decided to be strict with me, at least. But that's their prerogative. As a child, I couldn't understand. Why was I always the one getting scolded? Why does Jane get to do whatever she wants? That's what I always thought, growing up. Looking back, I'm grateful I didn't end up like her. But still, I can't help feeling some resentment towards my parents. There's this nagging feeling, but at the same time, I know my parents are important and irreplaceable, so I live with them. Knowing this, Jane takes advantage of them, bringing Lily and her other kids, having her way, and then leaving. Watching this, I've always held my tongue, knowing speaking up would only complicate things. I know it's partly my silence that has enabled Jane's behavior, but sometimes it's best not to stir up trouble. Just keep quiet and pretend not to notice. Then, something happened one day. A huge hurricane caused significant damage to the house where I was born and raised. It was originally my father's family home, over 50 years old. I was thankful we could live there at all, but it couldn't go unrepaired. The repair estimate was much higher than expected. Everywhere was worn down, and fixing one place would just lead to another breaking down. We were told it would be a never-ending cycle. Maybe we should just rebuild it. I suggested that to my parents. They were surprised but also happy. They said it was fine by me. After all, I was the one paying, so they had no complaints. I want a duplex for the future. They happily agreed, thinking it would be better if I ever got married. I had no boyfriend and no plans for marriage, but I wanted it so Jane's family could use the other unit when they came over. All of Jane's kids, except Lily, were boys. Maybe they all had different fathers. She had been on and off with various men at that time. Lily was the only one older because Jane had been married for 5 years at first. I once heard Jane say she had been putting up with it all that time. Every time I wanted to go out, it was who's gonna take care of the kids? Who are you meeting? When will you be back? Man, it was so annoying. I suppose that's a reasonable concern, but Jane's first husband was such a respectable, older working man, I often wondered why he chose her. He was a good earner and stable, so I thought he'd be easy to control and married him, but all he did was nag about housework and childcare. So irritating. It sounds like she's playing the victim, but the fact that she stayed married to him for 5 years seems miraculous for Jane. However, during that time, she was involved with various men, so maybe it lasted because of her first husband's patience, but eventually, he couldn't take it anymore and they divorced. You'd think she'd owe him alimony, but for some reason, he never asked for it. Perhaps he knew all too well the futility of fighting with Jane. It's unfortunate, but he chose her himself. While I do feel sympathy, I can't help but think it's his own fault for not seeing what kind of person she was. After that marriage, Jane literally jumped from man to man, giving birth to 4 more boys with different men each year. The boys are 5 and 4, close in age. Though the second husband is listed as the father of the boys, it's hard to say what the real story is. Every time she gave birth, she brought her older kids to our parents' house, and they scrambled to take care of the whole family. It was very annoying and disruptive to my work. And then my parents would expect me to help. That's why I decided to build a duplex, under the pretense of other reasons. While our family home was being rebuilt, Jane was surprisingly quiet. Maybe her latest husband was handling her well, or maybe it was because she just had her youngest boy, I'm not sure. Maybe it was because there was no house for her to return to. I don't know, but at least she was quiet, so the construction of the new house went smoothly. The first floor of the new house is for my parents to live in. Expecting Jane's family to barge in, I made the living and dining room a bit larger and placed a big table where everyone could sit and eat together. There's a bedroom for my parents, 2 guest rooms, and an automatic 24-hour bath. The kitchen, of course, has a dishwasher. When I was discussing the design with the architect, he was impressed, saying what a dutiful daughter I was to do all this for my parents. But I did it to prevent Jane's family from disrupting my life. That's the real reason. There's a door between the first and second floors that can be locked. So we can live separately but still communicate through a monitor-equipped intercom, which is reassuring. Life in the new house began. And it was really comfortable. I often eat dinner with my parents, but breakfast and lunch are separate. I felt like I was truly free for the first time. About a month into this new life, a different kind of storm hit. I'm so done with that guy. I'm breaking up with him. Jane said that and moved into my parents' place. Her latest divorce was also due to her cheating. It's more like she was kicked out than breaking up herself. How many times has it been? She never learns.
And can you believe it? He's demanding alimony.
Apparently, a DNA test of her youngest boy showed he wasn't the current husband's child. No wonder he's asking for alimony. But Jane was furious, acting as if it was an unfair demand.
And he's saying he won't acknowledge the youngest as his own. He's filing some sort of disownment papers.
She's probably talking about a paternity disavowal. If he stays legally the child's father, it could lead to complications later. It seems like a logical step to take. Such a narrow-minded man. Good thing I found out early. I feel so relieved to be rid of him. How she thinks this way, I have no idea, but Jane looked satisfied. I'm not paying any alimony, and I'll make him pay child support. I doubt that's possible, but she's free to think what she wants. From that day on, my parents, Jane, and her 5 kids, 8 people in total, started living together. I'm so glad I made it a duplex. I truly believe that from the bottom of my heart. But about a month after Jane moved back, her family started encroaching on my territory. I don't want you coming in when I'm working. When I told Jane this, she said, "You can't expect little kids to understand that." You'll know once you have kids of your own. Far from stopping them, she even encourages them to invade my living area. The hardest to deal with is my 12-year-old niece, Lily. She's like a mini version of Jane. When I'm not around, she takes clothes from my closet without permission. No matter how much I say, she doesn't stop. Of course, telling Jane is useless. She even blames me for not giving her adorable girl anything. Now, my parents have left the door that separates our living areas unlocked, allowing Jane's family to freely enter my room, and they just turn a blind eye. I've protested to my parents, but all they do is apologize, and I can't expect more. It disrupts my work and I can't live peacefully. While I was racking my brain about what to do, Jane and Lily made an outrageous demand. "Hey, you! Get out of here!" Jane burst into my room and said that.
What do you mean, suddenly? I don't understand.
"You really are dumb. You're in the way. So leave this house and live somewhere else." That's right, that's right. People who aren't family should leave. Jane and Lily said this together, smirking and laughing.
This is my house. I'm not leaving. You should leave, sis.
I retorted, but of course, they wouldn't listen. "I'm going to use your room, so get out. Old lady, go live in the yard."
Leave.
I kicked them out of my room and locked the door. It's useless to do that. That's right, that's right. We'll come every day until you leave. True to their word, Jane and Lily started coming to my living area several times a day, demanding that I leave. I protested again to my parents, but they just kept saying sorry. Unspoken, but I knew my parents probably wished I would leave if it would make Jane's family behave a little. Ah, I see. Something clicked inside me. Enough is enough. There's not a single ally for me in this house. Fine. I understand. I'll leave. I said this and turned my back to my parents, heading back to my room. I won't let Jane and her family have their way, but I have no attachment to this house anymore. Ignoring Jane and Lily's daily intrusions, I started preparing for the moment. A few days later, I packed my things and decided to leave the house. I'm leaving, but I won't know anything about what happens after this. As I said this, Jane and Lily high-fived in triumph. Who cares? Now we can live comfortably with just the family. Good riddance to the nuisance. Thank you for everything. I said this to my parents. They both looked troubled, but there seemed to be a sense of relief too. It had always been this way since I was a child. Jane would be selfish, crying and throwing tantrums, and I would endure. Then my parents would look relieved and say sorry to me, but that was it. Thinking back on this, I felt frustrated and empty. Even with such a big problem, my parents' attitude remained the same. It confirmed that my decision was right. I couldn't help but laugh. I decided to cut ties not only with Jane but also with my parents. I had thought there was a debt of gratitude for being raised by them. They were my blood parents, after all. But blood ties mean nothing. That's what I think now. Everyone in this house is related to me by blood. But I don't have a single ally. I left the house key on the table and walked out alone. For now, I'll stay in a monthly apartment. Alright, there are things I need to do. My work has been delayed because of them. I'll rebuild my life from here and move towards a new future. A week after moving to the monthly apartment, my phone rang loudly in the night. The caller ID showed my family home's number, but when I answered, it was Jane's voice. She was ranting about something, but I couldn't make out what. I held the phone slightly away from my ear and realized I didn't even know Jane's number. When I stayed silent, her voice finally faded. Maybe she was tired of yelling. Well, now we can talk. Hello. What do you want?
What do I want? What are you talking about?
I had a pretty good idea what this was about.
The real estate agent came today and said the house is for sale.
That's right. I put it up for sale recently. I thought they would contact you soon.
Why would you do something like that without my permission? This isn't a joke. Cancel it immediately.
The joke is on her. Why would I need her permission to sell that house? Jane has no rights to that house. I decided to explain it to her. That house is originally mine. I built it with my own money, and it's in my name. So I can do whatever I want with it. Understand?
Lies.
It's not a lie. Why don't you ask Mom and Dad? Jane seemed to think for a moment but then said,
Even if that's true, the land is mom and dad's, right?
I bought that too. So the land is also in my name.
When we rebuilt the house, I paid half the price of the land to our parents in cash.
I paid half because the land's heirs were supposed to be Jane and me. Maybe my parents thought of leaving it all to Jane eventually. But if I was going to build a house on it, it's a different story. It was land I had a right to inherit as well. So I paid for Jane's share and bought the whole thing in my name. I had to do that, or Jane might later claim she had rights and refuse to leave. That's why I did it. I only told Jane that I bought the land from our parents in cash, so it's in my name now. Jane kept yelling that it was a lie, but I said, if you can't believe it, check the registry, and hung up. By now, our parents are probably being bombarded by Jane. But I don't know anything about that. I just stated the facts. What they do with that information is up to my parents and Jane. As for the house, that's enough for now. I'm sure Jane will call again in a few days with more complaints. Sure enough, 3 days later, there was another call from my family home. It was Jane, ranting again. This time too, I'll just wait quietly until she calms down. It's a loss to say anything at times like this.
Hello, what do you want? It's not about what do I want. What's the meaning of this?
It's the same conversation as last time. It feels like déjà vu.
What do you mean? If it's about the house, I thought I explained that last time. It's not about the house. What did you say to my husbands?
There it is. As expected. But the way she says husbands instead of husband is so typical of Jane.
I don't think I said anything weird. Lies, all lies.
Why does Jane always call me a liar?
Because of you, they're saying they won't pay child support. Well, no one wants to pay child support for a child that's not theirs. That's none of your business. None of your business.
Maybe she's right. But I did check with the men Jane claims to be her children's fathers. It was simply a bit of payback. For trying to take the house I painstakingly built as a final residence. I guess a little revenge is okay. First, I contacted Jane's first husband, Lily's father. I inquired about Jane bringing Lily and her brothers to my house, seeming homeless, and wondered if living with their father might be better for them. I asked him about it. Jane's first husband, now remarried with a new family, hasn't seen Lily since the divorce. He pays child support and wants to keep it at that. I only replied with a relieved voice.
That's good. If you're paying child support, then Lily is undoubtedly your daughter.
He asked what I meant, so I added, seemingly flustered.
Well, the reason for the recent eviction was that the baby born wasn't my sister's husband's, so I
told him it wasn't his concern and ended the call. Apparently, he said, if Lily isn't my daughter, I won't pay any more child support. I'll want reimbursement for what I've paid until now. I'll stop the payments until the DNA results are out. If Lily is his real daughter, there should be no problem. Next, I called Jane's second husband, the legal father of the 3 eldest boys. I told him about Jane's family coming to my place and suggested that the boys might be better off living with their real father. Especially given the reason for Jane's latest divorce. If the boys are indeed his, they'd be better off with their real father. Considering Jane isn't a suitable mother. The response was the same. He said, if the boys aren't mine, I won't pay child support. If they are, I'll take custody. Either way, the child support Jane was receiving will stop. Jane's main concern seems to be this. The child support for 3 children amounts to a significant sum. If this happens, Jane won't have to raise 3 children, but she'll also lose various government benefits and supports related to the children. If the boys aren't his, she can still get the benefits, but child support drops to 0. It's a tough situation either way. Jane mainly protested about this.
If I don't get the money, you'll have to compensate me.
But I have no obligation to compensate Jane. I was merely concerned about Lily and her brothers becoming homeless and consulted with their supposed fathers. Out of auntly love. I even told Jane's third husband, who recently decided to divorce her and evicted her family, if he could possibly reconcile with Jane, mentioning her difficult situation. Of course, he refused immediately. Instead, he demanded, she hasn't signed the divorce papers yet? Tell her to sign them and send them over right away. I also contacted several men who were clearly involved with Jane, informing them that Jane had moved in with me and I was having trouble. Apparently, they've become unreachable, likely fleeing to avoid getting involved in the mess. If it turns out one of Jane's children is theirs, they might have to pay child support or even face alimony claims from the ex-husbands. I'd make the same decision to flee in their shoes.
You've turned everything upside down. Fix it.
Jane was still insisting, but of course, I had no intention of doing so.
Instead of that, how is your moving out preparation going? Huh? The real estate agent must have told you to vacate the house, right?
Apparently, a buyer is likely, and they informed me too. It was true. There were several inquiries due to the house being new and well built. The location is quite favorable. Not too close to the station, but near a major road with good bus service and convenient access to the station. I would have liked to continue living in that house myself. It's convenient for getting around, especially as I get older, and there are hospitals nearby. Above all, I built it considering my parents first. They would age before I do. But they chose Jane over me. Now it's up to Jane to take care of them.
That's why you better find a new place quickly, or you'll be out on the streets. You have to do something. I was kicked out by you and had to find a place for myself. Good luck finding one, bye.
I said what I wanted and hung up, then turned off the phone. I can't block the number yet, as I need to see how things turn out, but once everything is over, I'll cancel this phone. Soon after, a buyer was found for the house. The real estate agent managed to evict my parents and Jane's family, with a bit of trouble. They paid a small relocation fee and threatened legal action if they didn't leave. Surprisingly, Jane's eldest daughter turned out to be the first husband's child, and the next 3 boys were the second husband's. In Jane's case, even that's surprising. The first husband will continue to pay child support, but the 3 boys were taken in by their father. That's one good thing. Now, my parents, Jane, her eldest daughter, and the youngest child live in a small apartment. Jane, seeking child support for the youngest, contacted several men she used to date, but of course, couldn't reach any of them. The real father is out there somewhere, but even Jane doesn't know who he is. It's a hopeless situation. The third husband keeps demanding alimony, and Jane reluctantly started working. When she tried to evade payment, he caught her and said, "Pay up or I'll take legal action. If you don't like that, work and pay back even a little." Seemingly weak against legal threats, Jane is still working quietly. After getting married straight out of middle school and living off others, Jane is working for the first time. I don't know how long it will last, but she should keep at it. Perhaps because Jane has quieted down. Her eldest daughter, previously a mirror image of her mother's selfishness, has started to take care of her brother. When they moved to the current apartment, she refused, saying, "I don't want to live in such a small place," and wanted to live with her father, who rejected her. Realizing she had nowhere else to go, she now helps around the house and attends school diligently. She's still in middle school, it's not too late for her. I hope she doesn't follow in her mother's footsteps and lives a responsible life. Why do I know all this about Jane's family? Because my mother once called, asking for financial help. I asked what kind of help, and she said, general living expenses. I couldn't help but laugh. It seems they've forgotten why they're in this situation and want me to support them again.
Dad, Mom, you guys are still young. You should be able to manage living expenses if you both work a bit.
That's what I said as I declined their request. When Jane finished middle school and got married immediately, forgoing further education, I wasn't given any financial support for my high school tuition. Fortunately, I had good grades and received a scholarship, enabling me to continue my education through high school and college on my own. My parents hadn't given me a penny since then. I had to work part-time jobs for anything beyond tuition. Not only that, I also contributed to the household expenses from my earnings. So, if they had been living a normal life, they should have some savings. My father worked for a typical company. If they hadn't been wasteful, there's no reason they wouldn't have savings for retirement. After graduating college, I started contributing more money, eventually paying all the living expenses. Back then, I thought it was normal for a child to support their parents. So I continued living with them despite my reservations. At least my mother cooked and did the cleaning and laundry, which was helpful, so I also felt indebted. I guess it's okay as long as they're taking care of things for the money. That was my attitude. In the end, I realized I was also dependent on my parents in some ways. It felt like a codependent relationship. I didn't speak up against my sister, even though I disliked her actions. If I had, my parents would have abandoned me. I was sure they would choose her over me. I thought that way because I didn't want to be abandoned by my parents. I was scared of it. I couldn't say anything because of those feelings. By daring to make a significant purchase and then letting it go, I feel like I've finally been freed from the shackles of my blood relatives. I always felt that only my sister was cherished. Maybe I was binding myself with feelings of envy and the hope that one day they would pay attention to me. It might sound harsh, but my parents are still at an age where they can take care of themselves. If they really get into trouble in the future, I plan to lend a hand, but not now. If I help them now, things will surely revert back to how they were. They would probably give my support to my sister, and she would quit her job. Consequently, my niece might choose the same path as her mother. After all, they are so similar, both in appearance and character. Now, for the first time, I am free. From now on, I plan to live focusing only on my happiness. Fortunately, I have a profession and financial stability. Unlike my sister, who was always considered adorable, my appearance is quite ordinary. I think that's also a reason why my parents favored her. While I mocked my sister as a hopeless person, I always had a complex about it. Now I can admit that. It's often said that when you let go of something, something new comes in, and I believe it's true. As I search online for a new place to live, I fully embrace my freedom. I want to experience romance, which I've held back on until now, and hopefully get married. I'm determined to find someone I love. That's my primary goal right now.